Hello, I'm Nalini McNabb, and this is our Wise Women Roundtable pre-equinox, which is coming up in this coming week. And what's coming through me more strongly than I can even form words for fast enough some of the time is how an age, an era, an epochal shift is happening. And one of the ways that this has played out is that the British monarchy has changed. Now, many of us really won't care, and many of us care a little, and many of us think, oh, that's either too good or too bad or something. And that's just a whole lot of thinking. What I noticed when it first happened was that there was a profound shift on the planet. Now, this isn't about one person, this is about all of us, and especially those of us in feminine bodies or with strong feminine sides in male bodies. Either way, both, all three, everybody. And it has to do with a huge linchpin, like a railroad tie, a stake rather, being pulled from the planet. And it has to do with patriarchal feminine hierarchy. It's a structure, not necessarily a system or a pattern or a program. These are the things that are clearing out of all of us. But it has to do with what we think we know, what we cherish that we've been taught, and what we absolutely love about our personal knowledge and genius, and what we think we want to call mastery. And as I said to my lovely friends here, calling bullshit, because what has just happened on the planet, and pardon my non-French, um, is so much more profound than anything any of us thinks. So, as an example, I went to, and I will misquote, so apologies to Richard Bach. This is from the prologue to his book Illusions. There's a barnacle on the bottom of a river that dreams of something else, that dreams of being free, that dreams of flight. Now, how many of us can relate to that? And so finally, one day, somehow, the barnacle chooses to let go every last little gritty, squitchy, these are not Richard's words, bit of that let's go. And all the other barnacles are saying, oh, don't do that because you'll be smashed and tumbled across the rocks and your life will end. And this barnacle is thinking, good, as far as the life ending, that life. And so it lets go fully. And it is tumbled and smashed and crushed across the rocks for quite a bit. And then the current begins to pick it up and it sails along freely in the river. And it sails across another bed of barnacles. And the barnacles are all looking up, going, look, a savior, a being like us, but it flies. And this barnacle is saying, no, I'm just like you. I just chose to let go. I can say that about any leap in consciousness I've ever made. I'm just like you. I chose to let go. And what we're all being faced with right now on the planet is a choice to let go of the structures. You know, the ones we were all just talking about this, the obvious ones that are right here that everyone else can see, but you can't because they're right there. They're part of you. These are dissolving. They're obsolete. They're not good, they're not bad, they're not anything, they're simply obsolete. Everybody talks about new energy, new paradigm, new earth, new world. Okay, whatever your preferred terminology. But this comes from within, it comes from the heart. Like those of us who are seers, we can no longer see only right here. It has to come from the heart. Otherwise, blinders, source has closed that door. And we've all been saying, well, I can't see further than today or tomorrow. And so I was sitting with that in meditation and I thought, well, source can see anything, anytime, and does so through the consultations I do with people. So what's my problem? And so I sat into my body and watched my energy go into the heart and into a collaboration between heart and womb and all of nature. And then I could see anything, just like before. And it wasn't exactly a revelation, except that it was, because our bodies, our physical and emotional and mental bodies, are being scoured out of all of these old allegiances, alliances, oaths, vows, pledges, and just leanings in to what no longer will function. It's not harmonious. It will not sustain us on this world. And it certainly won't sustain us in these bodies. And so what we really are about to learn the hard way, if we don't let go, let's just be honest, is a new kind of sovereignty. And I've noticed just in observing, the shift in the Commonwealth, nobody knows what that means. There are those that are afraid of the change, don't want the change because we like the status quo, because, humans always really like the status quo. It's one of our least attractive qualities. But that's within all of us, is that we need to let go and let source be the doer. I talk about this a lot, so do other people. But have we been giving it lip service, or where have we been giving it lip service within our minds and our bodies? And this is what's being dredged right now. This is what's being, purged from each and every one of us. And that is where, at least in my humble seeing, that is where the change begins. And so, speaking of a shift in sovereignty, I'd like to turn this over to Sarah. She has some things to say about that.
I do, and thank you, Nalini, for so eloquently talking about the energy of it, and just allowing us to kind of open into the changes. So yes, sovereignty is on my mind and my heart, particularly because Queen Elizabeth was my queen for so long, even though I wasn't particularly attached to that part. It's part of how I grew up, and part of my culture, and part of what I was taught, part of what my money looked like for a long time. The Queen's head has been everywhere. And so, and interesting as today, the word sovereignty has just kept coming up. It's coming up in the classes that I've taught this afternoon, and so it feels like a real need for us to look in the mirror. For me, this is how it is for me. It's like, so this is what's going on, and I have respect for that. I don't want to get too involved in it, but I have respect for what's happening. So this sovereignty word keeps coming up. So let me look in the mirror, and what does it mean to me? So when I ask myself that question, I remember that when I first heard the word, which was probably about 10 years ago, I had no idea what it meant. And in fact, one of my clients asked me, Sarah, what does sovereignty mean? And I was like, oh, that's really embarrassing because I don't know. So I said something, but it reminds me of how I just, it wasn't something that I was brought up with to own for myself. It was an aspect outside of myself. And so not knowing, and following my life as my life has been guided to go, it's been a big part of what I've learned to do, even though I haven't always called it sovereignty. And this morning, as I was getting ready for my day and doing the things that I do to guide myself into my day, I'm a bit of a slow riser in the mornings. I'm not a kind of get up and go kind of person. It takes me a while. I really got the feeling, and it really helped me, which is why I share it now. We're going to see over the next few months, depending on what reality we look at, but if we look at the reality of the 3D, we're going to hear a lot about lack and constriction and not enough and all cuts and, all the words. And that brings fear. And I can feel the constriction in my body just thinking about it, actually, even just talking about it now. And this morning, I was just offered this completely different way. And it was like, so you have this is the voice that was kind of speaking to me. So you have things that are dear to your heart, Sarah, and for yourself personally, and for those you love, and for your life here, and things that you want to offer to the world, and how nature and energy wants to co-create with you. If you stay in that place, it's going to be really hard to do. Maybe you'll do it, but you'll do it out of kind of like striving and, that kind of energy. I'm quite good at that. So it's one of my sovereign things to let go of that. How about if you just stepped, and I was literally given the words, just step out the box and allow the energies to come through you and inform you as to how to do. If you try to operate out of that old system, it's not going to work. It's really not going to work. If you step into this new energy, then something brand new can come through you, and it will be full of ease, and it will give you the things that you want, but you have to get out the way. And so I was very relieved to hear all of this, but just talking to you all now, I'm like, so somebody said to me, so how are you going to do that? And I say, I have no idea. I have no idea. I'll just get up every morning and do my best to get out the way. And my tools for that are essences and just being in nature and prayer and dance and all of those things that I'm sure many people listening also engage in. So for me right now, that is really what's coming up as a new level of sovereignty. Not, yes, owning and claiming who we are, but that's kind of almost old language now because we've been saying it for so long. It's like, okay, so if we've now done that, so how do we now just walk through life as it? Become, I guess in the priestess communities we'd say, become the hollow bone, literally. Just be the hollow bone. And in that you will get all the beautiful things. So I'll just talk for myself, the beautiful things I want to work with, my house and my new car, all the things in the 3D can come with that. It's not a sacrifice to the physical, it's in prayer with that. And so, yeah, that's my sharing from the heart and from a level of really not knowing, but it's what I'm embracing. And so I'm now going to hand over to Elizabeth, who I'm sure will also very beautifully and elegantly speak through the next levels of this in your own way, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Sarah. I love all of these pieces, and as you were speaking, Sarah, I was seeing a liminal space, and that this equinox is unique in that, unlike other equinoxes, which often feel, to me at least, like the peak of a wave before the full breadth of the wave is experienced, it's a halfway point. But this one is different because it's a liminal space. It's a space between spaces. And when you enter into a liminal space, you open a door and there's this area of neutrality, sort of like an aperture. And then there's this other door, and this other door is closed, and it's the arena, the new playing field, the new party, the new culture, new earth, new. And then you've stepped out of this other paradigm, this other party, this other space, this other place of playing with consciousness, and this now no longer serves because it's not in the same frequency as nature, as the earth, as the galactic situation. And so now you're in this in-between place, which is extremely awkward. It's like a coat closet. But in order to go to the new party, you have to close this door. And you certainly can't wear what you've been wearing in the old party. You can't wear the structures, you can't wear the culture, you can't wear the things that you think you know. You can't wear the feminine patriarchal structures or the financial system or the economy that used to exist. You can't wear the old politic. And now you have to get naked in order to go to this next place. But the tricky part is that you don't know. You don't know exactly what that new party's going to look like. So what are you going to wear if you don't know what the theme of the party is? Well, we're getting a clue. The door is starting to peek open a little bit, and the first thing we're seeing is sovereignty. And we all have to go through this process with defining it. So you got to get naked first. You got to be willing, and willingness is key. You got to be willing to let go. You got to be really, really willing. And it can be very terrifying to say, you mean I have to take everything off? Everything? I really worked hard for this stuff. I worked really hard for this master's degree. I really worked hard for this claim of being a mystic or a healer or warrior. And I didn't just work, this lifetime. I've worked many lifetimes. I've worked since the beginning of time for this stuff, man. You're telling me I have to be done with it? Well, yes and no. In a way, it's more that in order to, you can't hold on to it. It's always going to be part of you. But if you're willing to let it be part of what you are, then you don't have to wear it. You don't have to hang on to it. It makes your field bigger. So you just get bigger because of what you've experienced, but you're not running what your soul is through what you think you are, what you think you know. And so now you're naked, you're willing, you hung it all up, you're ready to be part of this new party. So at this moment, we're all being asked to understand sovereignty. And at first, we're going to run it through our mind and what we think we know in our head. But that's not going to ultimately get you where you want to be, which is fully functioning, active in this very formless, timeless energy that is the next paradigm that's right before us. It's from here, it's from the heart, like Nalini said, and the gut, the embodiment, the DNA, the bacteria that runs your body. Most of you is bacteria, and they are very smart. They know exactly how this earth works, and they are in love with her just as she is in love with us and in love with them. And it's a perfect love. And that is the beginning of this very interesting, new, fresh version of sovereignty that has to do with the place and space we're in. So you can't run it through your mind, because that's where all the old culture is. You can only allow it to move through your soul, which comes direct from source, and burn away everything that you, as the personal self, thought you knew, so that it can reveal this very fresh version of sovereignty that comes from nature itself. So it's not going to come from humanity. It won't, it can't, because Homo sapien is done. Now we're entering into the realm, the time of Homo luminous. And that means the human of light, a being whose soul has full and complete and total reverence and capability through the physical body, through the DNA. It's literally the opportunity to take all of what you and your DNA and your genetic trauma and your genetic knowledge, your personal mind knowledge, your personal self knowing, and bleaching it in the light. As the door gets wider, as the crack gets more and more open, as we get to equinox, and eventually that door will be fully open at solstice, that light is going to reveal all of what needs to go. And it will be, and should be, very uncomfortable, but through the willingness, through the attention of the soul, then I think that discomfort itself becomes a gift too. And it can look, I think, like mental, emotional, physical discomfort. And the outcome, of course, we don't know, because this is a very unusual time. It's the change of a species. And we haven't seen that in 800,000 years. So the last time it happened was from Homo erectus to Homo sapien. And that was one of the most grand, most amazing events in consciousness that's ever happened in this particular solar system. But here we have a chance to do it again, and it's more intense because we have more people on the planet than basically all of the 12,000 year shifts combined all at once now here on the planet. So if it feels intense, if it feels like sometimes impossible, if it feels like trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, well, yeah, because on the other side of this party, you're not even going to be the human you thought you were. And that's exciting, but also ought to be pretty terrifying. And if you're really navigating it well, then you know you're on the right track. Because if you follow your fear, you're going to get higher faster. So that's what I perceive at the moment. That's what's happening in consciousness. And I'll hand it off to Kaylin to give us more clarity about our place in space.
Thank you. Oh, what you have all shared has been so brilliant and so aligned with what's happening, of course, in the cosmic realm of things. And so, as we approach the equinox and that balance of light and dark, and that happens twice a year. So there's it depending on what hemisphere you're in, what season it's going into, and uh, and that's a between place. And it's kind of like what you were describing, Elizabeth. It's like walking through that door. You're not really in completely out of the old reality because you still remember it. It's still part of you. You've still got maybe connections or maybe some attachments that you're working on letting go of. I mean, you're not yet fully in the new reality, but you're getting naked and willing and all of that. And so it's that, but it's a between place. And that's where the greatest alchemy can happen. And so here we are within a few days of this exact equinox point. And what's happening on this equinox is another rare factor, and that is that Mercury is going to be exactly conjunct the sun. And that's another between kind of place. So retrograde Mercury, we've been dealing with Mercury retrograde now, and sometimes that creates some challenges for people, especially if you tend to be more of a left brain type of person and you like things to happen logically, linearly, and rationally. Doesn't happen as easily in a Mercury retrograde. So this is another place where surrender and letting go and being willing to just trust that the messages that are coming through don't have to be in the form that you're maybe used to. And we can be open to and be in the place of questioning, like, okay, I don't really know how to do this sovereign thing, this new way of doing sovereignty. I don't know really how to be in this new reality. That's okay. If I can just let go of the need to know and trust that process and just go with that flow, it'll be amazing. So Mercury, the messenger, retrograde with the sun at the equinox, within about less than 6 hours of the preciseness of the equinox, we have Mercury precisely with the sun. So it's really close. And this is the closest of our lifetime and of maybe many lifetimes. I went and looked forward, and every 46 years, Mercury comes back pretty close. It's the closest Mercury return anybody will ever experience in their life is at age 46 or 92. And I looked 46 years past, and it was the Sun Mercury conjunction was at 29 Virgo, not 0 Libra. And I looked at it 46 years into the future, 2068, and it's at 29. It's at 1 Libra, not 0 Libra. So this, again, in that 92-year period, this is the closest one. So the closest one in a lifetime. And I'd have to do a little more research to see, how long has it been since it's been this close? Like, whoa. So it's just really telling us that something new is being, it's like a reset point. And we've had, as we've talked about before, the Uranus in the North Node in Taurus resetting Earth's destiny. And that's still really close, and that's still really at play, and we're still in that as well. And then we add this to the whole configuration, and it's that between place. Now, I posted something about this today on Facebook, and somebody thought I said the zero Libra point, and they thought I was saying the zero zebra point. And then somebody commented and said, "Oh, that's really good because it's black and white. Zebras are black and white, and it's like, the balance of light and dark." So it's like, how can we have fun and play with this transition because as everybody's really spoken into to some degree, is that it's not necessarily going to be easy. It's not necessarily going to be like a walk, just like, oh, I can do this. You might feel challenged, and to let go, like that barnacle letting go, that takes a lot of courage to be willing to let go, to be willing to be swept away and carried off into something new. And I say there are days I'm much more willing than others. Some days I'm just like not willing at all. So then how can we have compassion for ourselves on those days when we're not so willing? And to recognize that, okay, maybe not right now, but I'll get there. Because that is my intent. I will get there. It's just going to take me a little longer as I resist, as I go through whatever process I'm going through right now before I can get to that next level of letting go. So the other thing I want to mention is that right now we have this Venus also with the sun. So Mercury's with the sun right now, and we'll be exact on the 22nd. Depending on your time zones, for some people it'll be the 23rd, late on the 22nd in like Pacific time zone, and early on the 23rd in other time zones. But Venus at the end of this, so we're starting at the zero Libra point, Sun Mercury conjunction, rare event, only happens every 46 years to become anywhere near this point, as I mentioned. And then at the end, when we get to October 22nd, Sun and Venus at 29 Libra exactly conjunct. So it's like bookending the Libra domain, the time that the sun is in Libra, one with Mercury, one with Venus. Now, Mercury's retrograde, Venus will be direct. This is Venus and her long sort of process of going through death and rebirth. So who she's thought she was. So this is, and interestingly, the Queen was 96 years old. She was in her Venus return, and she died right as Venus was going into the underworld. Like, we just can't make this stuff up. It's like, oh my God. And this Venus cycle is the grandmothers, the wise ones, the elders, it's like, how do we tune back into that wisdom that hasn't necessarily been as honored in our culture? And so she's an elder, 96 years old, and her Venus return, passing from this realm, so that something new structures, as you were talking about, Nalini, the new structures can come forth, because that old structure had to go and had to be let go of, so that we could move into this this new time of how are we going to do it in the wisest, most sustainable, most effective ways possible. And we don't know what that is, and that's okay. But we know that we need to know that that is the question to be with. So, so that exact conjunction of Venus and the Sun is representing another sort of portal or between point, activation point, and then Venus won't come up into the evening sky where she's on her ascent until December. So it's just blowing my mind just to even think about it. It's like, wow. And the way that you all set this up was so good. Thank you for that. And I just encourage everyone to re-listen to this and to take notes and to be open, be willing, and to trust that we don't know what's coming now. We're in a new reality, and the more that we can allow ourselves to not know, the better. I just like to just want to quote Swami Beyondananda, who said, "The best way to face the unknown is by not knowing." So we'll end with that, and thank you so much, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next time.